Hey everybody, and Tony here with my review of Bizet's Carmen with once again conductor Ben Glassberg, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Before I get into my review of Bizet's Carmen at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, starring David Philip as Don José, I want to dedicate this review to my mother who is celebrating her birthday. So Mom, if you are watching this video, I wish you the most prosperous, most amazing, most beautiful, and most exceptional birthday celebration. Here's to many more years of prosperity, abundance, joy, and a lot of strength and beauty in your life, not only as my mother, but also as the person who pushed me to be the person I am today, who pushed me to keep on going from strength to strength, as well as be the person who is able to tackle different challenges in my life, not only as a content creator, but also as an overall person. Therefore, Mom, have a great birthday and enjoy my review of Bizet's Carmen at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, which is actually the sixth time I caught this production by Ole Anders Thornberg. As I stated before, this is the sixth time I caught Ole Anders Thornberg's production of Bizet's Carmen because I wanted to see and hear David Philip sing the role of Don José. David Philip is a tenor who fascinated me by a huge mile. I've been following his career for roughly 10 to 12 years when I first heard him in a lot of the lyric tenor roles such as Mitrane from Rossini's Semiramide. And ever since then, he has been building up his repertoire to sing a lot of the beefier, steelier, spinto / dramatic tenor roles, ranging from Lohengrin to Walter von Stolzing to Apollo to Canio from I Pagliacci. I was initially skeptical of how his voice was going to carry through because the transition from singing these nice lyric tenor roles to these steelier, beefier, and more incisive spinto / dramatic tenor roles could not have been any easy for him, let alone be that much of a huge and extremely excruciating stretch for someone as versatile and dedicated as David Philip. However, when I heard him sing, all of my skepticism and all of my worries melted away because Mr. Philip possessed a steely, strong-voiced, incisive, and absolutely ringing instrument that managed to penetrate over that orchestra, especially where his clarion high notes were concerned. He definitely fulfilled the demands needed to sing Don José, a burnished timbre that he managed to give off with a lot of passion and a lot of steel in his voice. He was able to produce a lot of fire when it came to that unhinged and unpredictable side of Don José, as if though he were a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And even with that unhinged side of his Don José, he was able to show that yes, this was a man who initially gone off the wrong side of the tracks when he killed someone before joining the corporals, and even before he met Carmen, did he ultimately end up traversing to his own doom, especially when he ends up murdering Carmen out of jealousy. Therefore, that unhinged side to David Philip's Don José was riveting from beginning to end. He was thoroughly thrilling vocally, and he had a lot of voice to spare, especially when he let it all out and he managed to beat that orchestra to shreds with everything he's got. I do wish for a lot more charisma. I do wish for a lot more vocal warmth, and I do wish for a lot more completeness in nuance, because who I have in my ears as my personal favorite Don Josés are Enrico Caruso, Giovanni Zanatello, Giovanni Martinelli, Giacomo Lauri Volpi, Bernd Aldenhoff, Helge Roswenge, Franco Corelli, Mario del Monaco, Tony Poncet, Roy Jobin, René Maison, César Vetsani, Albert Lance, Guy Chauvet, and Gustave Boutiot. Those tenors had way more warmth in their voices, way more passion and genuine fire, and were able to combine steel, fire, passion, and a whole lot of blood and guts to make Don José come to life. Yes, I will never fault David but Philip for what he was able to accomplish as Don José. He was able to be all blood and gut, and of course, all power when he was able to just let his voice ring throughout the orchestra. But I do ask for a lot more charisma in his vocal portrayal, as well as in his theatrical portrayal. Nevertheless, David but Philip did such a wonderfully commendable job that whatever vocal faults he had, like the occasional wobble and the sometimes unpleasant tremolos that otherwise would have inhibited his overall vocal performance, and the monochromaticism of the way that he sang Don José with only that steeliness, and dare I say that cold steeliness in his voice, they could all be forgiven because he had the correct size to sing Don José, he had the correct size to penetrate over that orchestra, and he had the appropriate size to make sure that he does not end up being drowned out by that orchestra, especially when Ben Glassberg is on the podium. Therefore, I salute David but Philip for a job commendably done, and here's also hoping that he continues to grow in nuance, grow in warmth, and grow in completeness in his vocal technique, because yes, the cold steeliness is there. That absolutely penetrating quality is there. He just needs to work on ensuring that his covered chest tones do not end up being compromised. He has to make sure that he continues to maintain that oval shape when hitting all his notes. And he also needs to make sure that he has enough voice to not only sing the more charged up dramatic parts, but also parts that call for more nuance and that call for more vocal beauty, and even to make sure that there is a lot more warmth in future performances, whether as Don José or many other roles that he is going to have in his repertoire. Artur Garbas strikes again as a warm-toned and absolutely gorgeous sounding Don Cahier, and he continues to do such a laudable job in making this bandit come to life. And even though I still prefer a tenor singing this role a la Kurt Equilutz or David Cangelosi, I could still applaud Artur Garbas for using his fine sense of musicianship and theatricality to make Don Cahier come to life. Kieran Carell was just as fine and solid as Remendado, and I could kind of forgive him for his nasality, because that character tenor nasality is quite appropriate for Remendado, given that he is a secondary character, but nevertheless an important character in the entire opera. He was still able to be a fine singing actor all the way through, and even though his voice does leave a bit to be desired, his timing and His accuracy, both vocally and theatrically, are absolutely well done. Aygul Ahmed Sheena grew in opulence and volume as the title heroine of Carmen. She did improve on a lot of chest tones and coordinated chest tones at that. However, I still have a huge problem when she sang Répétera la mort from Un vin pour éviter, because that particular line, especially when she sings that A flat, needs to be either sung with coordinated chest voice or full head voice, or open and full chest voice. Just ask the likes of Florizza Cristoforeanu, Ebestiniani, Gianna Pederzini, Elena Obraztsova, Aurelia Dominguez, Giuseppina Zinetti, and even Rosa Poncelle, who were able to master that coordinated chest voice, or even in Giuseppina Zinetti's case, let alone in Aurelia Dominguez's and Elena Obraztsova's cases, sing that particular note with full-on chest voice. I highly encourage Aygul Ahmed Sheena to keep on developing her chest tones, developing her coordinated chest tones, because she does have great material to work with. She does continue to be alluring as Carmen. She was still able to be not only theatrically alluring, but also vocally alluring. There was that nice opulence that she was still able to maintain, and I encourage her to not only maintain that said opulence, but also keep on digging for richer chest tones, more coordinated chest tones, and really give singing in coordinated chest voice a go, because that is what's going to save her vocally, as well as unlock all the doors that are going to open for her when she takes on roles like Amneris, Brangena, Dalila, Eboli, Marina Mineshech, Didon and Cassandra from Le Toyon, and even Giulietta from Le Comte of Man, Santuzza from Cavalleros de Cana, or even Anita from La Navarrese, Ortrud from Lohengrin, Venus from Tannhäuser, let alone Fricka, Sieglinde, and Waltraute from Das Rheingold in Die Walküre, and Götterdämmerung, respectively. And lest I forget about Kundry from Parsifal. The possibilities for Aygul Ahmed Sheena are absolutely endless, so long as she continues to develop her technique in the right way, really sharpen that coordinated chest voice, especially in her big aria in the third act, En vain pour éviter, especially where their chest tones are concerned, and sing with a lot more power and not be afraid to just let her voice out, because Aygul Ahmed Sheena actually has a beautiful voice. She just needs to go the right direction with her chest tones, with her head voice, and actually participate head voice and chest voice extremely well, so that she can manage not only Carmen, but also the bigger mezzo-soprano roles, not only in the future, but also in the present. So here's also hoping that Aygul Ahmed Sheena continues to develop her instrument in the right way. There is a lot of potential for that diamond in her voice to shine, so long as she continues to make sure that head voice and chest voice participation is an absolute must in everything she sings. Maria Motoligina is consistently wonderful as Micaela. That fullness in her voice, the way she was able to penetrate through that orchestra thanks to her gleaming and lightning like high notes, and her darling stage presence managed to make me fall for Maria Motolagina as Micaela. She was not only laudable in this role, but also excellent. She was able to grow in more coordination, even though she did show some signs of singing in collapsed head voice. But some of those flaws can be totally forgiven because Maria Motolagina was a consummate singing actress, complete with a full-toned voice that can sing anything from the chest tones to the high notes to all of these lovely and soft passages, and even let her voice out with full abandon and volume. Maria Motolagina is one soprano I want to encourage to do not only better, but unleash her true potential in roles that can challenge her, as well as roles that she can truly embrace as a full lyric slash spinto soprano, complete with gleaming high notes and a technique that is absolutely peerless. Karis Tucker is, as always, a creamy toned Mercedes. Yes, she could use a lot more head voice and chest voice participation, and yes, her voice can be a whole lot clearer, but the creaminess found in her beautiful mezzo-soprano voice cannot be equaled, and she definitely knew how to play up the glamorous aspects of Mercedes, as well as the more excitable aspects to make the role her own. I will always argue until my dying day that Michot Marero's best role in Carmen is Frasquita. Yes, her Micaela was well sung, but she's just a tad bit too light and too high singing for a role that requires more lyricism and more beauty and more sizability. With Frasquita, Michot Marrero was able to take advantage of her silvery, light, and agile, light lyric soprano voice, and even her absolutely wild and fascinating choreography to make Frasquita her own, even to the point where she managed to steal the show from everybody's feet, and not just from the supporting players, but to some extent the main players too. Her physique du rôle as Frasquita, as well as her agile movements and silvery voice, managed to make Michot Marrero's portrayal of Frasquita an absolute standout. Christian Simmons continued to show his gallantry and absolute masculine charm as Zuniga, and he was also able to bring in a lot more nuance with his portrayal of this particular head officer. However, I'm still not crazy about his throatiness, and I'm still not so crazy about some elements of his voice being stuck, but I still love the timbre that he was able to produce. It was dark, sufficiently rich, and it is something that I love in many a bass singing Zuniga. Yes, he could still learn the ways of singing squillo, especially when it comes to my personal favorite Zunigas of all time, ranging from Anton Diakov, Kurt Böhme, and even Xavier Duprat and Jean-Paul Bogart, just to name a few. If you want singers who didn't really sing Zuniga, but were just as well known for their squillo and their overall vocal strength as true basses, look no further than the likes of Bonaldo Gaiotti, Ferruccio Mazzoli, Jerome Hines, Giorgio Tozzi, Cesare Siepi, and Nikolai Gyaurov. These are true bass voices that Mr. Simmons definitely needs to emulate, as well as make sure that that throatiness just ends up being kicked out the door so that he can sing more freely and more handsomely as a fine bass with a great future ahead of him, especially in roles such as Assur from Semiramide, Don Giovanni, Filippo II, König Heinrich der Vogler, Hans Sachs, Landgraf Hermann, and König Marke, just to name a few of the wonderful roles for a basso cantante. Christian Simmons has the potential to keep on growing, and I do not want to see his star being squandered, let alone wasted anytime soon. He just needs to get rid of that throatiness and sing way more freely as a bass who's got so much potential to give to the world of opera. Byung-gil Kim is still an admirable escamillo. I still love that smug masculinity that he was able to exude in every single bore. I also loved his sense of dashing virility that made me fall for him as a singing actor. He was completely alluring in that role, as he's always been, and I've always been excited to see Mr. Kim perform Escamillo because he does have that strikingly strong stage presence to make the role work. Yes, I'm not so crazy about his throatiness. Yes, I am not so crazy about that crude, swallowed quality of his voice. And he definitely needs to improve on that if he is to become better as a fine bass/bass baritone who can go astride from the basso cantante roles to the more high singing bass baritone roles with everything he's got. And he's got a great future ahead of him. All he needs to do is emulate the likes of bass baritones with true squillo, such as my personal favorites, Ferdinand Franz, Hans Hotter, Gustav Neidlinger, Hermann Ude, George London, Thomas Stewart, and Franz Krass in order to achieve and even listen to what true squillo singing sounds like in these bass baritones who have also been prominent escamillos in their time. So while Byung-gil Kim has so much to work on in terms of getting rid of that throatiness, getting rid of those inhibitions that made him feel stuck in his singing, I could still give him credit for that dark timbre, which I love in many bass baritones, let alone high basses singing escamillo. And I will keep on prompting and encouraging him to sing with more squillo and sing way more openly and more freely if he is to continue his operatic career, which I'm sure he will. He just needs to make sure that squillo singing remains at the top of his to-do list in order to improve as a complete singer. Dean Murphy grew so exceptionally well in his portrayal of Morales in terms of his voice being more fuller to hear and his voice having way more focus and no wobbles, let alone tremolos to be found. It is clear, straightforward, and even though it could be deeper and richer because who I have in my ears for real baritones singing Moraleses include the likes of Willy Domgraf Fassbender, Robert Kearns, and Giorgio Zancanaro, Dean Murphy was still able to be sufficiently charismatic as Morales, and I wish him all the best in all of his future endeavors in the Cavalier baritone repertoire, and of course, way more development in true squillo singing and true dark singing as a baritone. Overall, while there were some reservations I had about certain singers, at least the singing remained not only consistent, but also better in certain singers' cases. I loved David Butt Phillips singing as Don José. Although he could use a lot more charisma in his voice and stage presence, although he could use a lot more warmth and nuance in his vocal projection, and way more focus, cleanliness, and natural steel pouring out of his voice, I could still give him a lot of credit for what he was able to pull off as Don José, both vocally and theatrically. The fact that he was able to play up the unhinged side of Don José was alluring to witness, and I salute him for singing over that orchestra with everything he's got. And yes, the other singers such as Aygul Ahmed Shina, Maria Motolegina, Byung-gil Kim, Arthur Garbas, Kieran Carell, Christian Simmons, Dean Murphy, Karis Tucker, and Michot Marrero did really well, all things considered. Especially where Maria Motolegina's strong Micaela is concerned, and she definitely sang the heck out of the role with everything she's got. Aygul Ahmed Shina continues to show a lot of potential as a mezzo-soprano. It's just that she needs to dig into those chest tones a lot more. Byung-gil Kim just needs to sing with a lot more squillo, yet still maintain his ever charismatic and ever charmingly virile stage presence, which has always made him an absolutely wonderful figure to catch on stage. And let's also not forget about the exceptional singing to be found in Arthur Garbas as Don Cair, Kieran Carell, although who was quite nasal, yet kind of a bit unsure about how to make of his overall vocal production, as Remendado still was able to be a fine singer in that character part. And let's also not forget about the cleanliness of tone and absolutely fine singing to be accomplished by Karis Tucker's creamy Mercedes and Michot Marrero's vibrant Frasquita. And despite some of the vocal issues I've had with Christian Simmons and Dean Murphy, at least they were able to grow stronger in their performances as Zuniga and Morales respectively. Therefore, the singing was quite better this evening, especially with David Philip leading the helm as a stirring and really unhinged Don José. If there are three lexemes that can perfectly describe Ben Glassberg's conducting of Bizet's Carmen, they would be big, blasted, and brassy. Yes, I definitely enjoyed that big conducting that made it so exciting. However, there were occasions where his usage of brass instruments made certain quiet moments seem too abrupt and way too unnuanced, even to the point where I felt so distracted and totally taken out of whatever drama, tension, or buildup there was. At times it felt like the buildup to certain moments, like the entr'acte from the third act, felt underwhelming because of the excessive usage of brass instruments. There were occasions where the buildup in the card scene from Carmen, Mercedes, and Frasquita felt just as underwhelming. And there were also occasions where I felt that there should have been a lot more nuance, especially where the quieter moments are concerned. And let's also not forget about his extremely speedy and extremely fast conducting of the overture. Yes, it was exciting, but other than that, I felt like it was a tad bit too fast, almost as if though that he were rushing through the overture just to get to the main action. Other than that, at least he can be exciting from time to time. It's just that he needs to show a lot more restraint and a lot more nuance in what he has been accomplishing thus far. But at least the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin were always reliable from beginning to end. So overall, with David Phillips singing up a storm despite some of his vocal reservations, I still gotta give him credit for what he was able to pull off as Don José. He definitely carried the evening with everything he's got, and he also worked well off of the cast, yet there were times that he kind of overshadowed them, especially where Aygul Ahmed Shina was concerned. There were occasions where he sounded way louder than Aygul Ahmed Shina, when the case should be that both Don José and Carmen should be just as strong and powerful as each other, especially in that final act. At least he was able to give the goods in big singing. And even though, like I said, there were some reservations I had with his voice, like the wobble that tended to be intrusive, the occasions where he had to really lift his voice up to let his voice penetrate over that orchestra, thus making his voice sound effortful, I could still forgive whatever flaws David but Philip had as Don José, because he did deliver the goods in big singing, and he did so with abandon despite some of the vocal flaws that he possessed. Those vocal flaws can still be fixed so long as he maintains consistency with his vocal performances. And for those of you who caught this performance of Bizet's Carmen at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you really enjoy David Philip's performance as Don José? Did you feel like he stole the show from everybody's feet, all thanks to that incisive voice of his that could penetrate over that orchestra? Or did you feel like he was not really nuanced in this part and was completely nuanceless? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Bizet's Carmen at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, starring David Philip as Don José. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Verdi's Aida, also at the Staatsoper unter den Linden, but this time officially with Ketevan Kemoklitze as Amneris. So until then, good night everybody, and to Mom, happy birthday. Here's to a lot more prosperity and love, and I love you, Mom.